Hello folks, my name is Ben Gilroy and welcome to Ireland's independent network IIN. We are a brand new streaming television service which we hope to give a voice to a number of groups throughout the length and breadth of this country whose voice never really gets heard. You are welcome to come on the show. Details will be on the screen after the show and we would like to hear from you. So we don't promise an easy ride here, but what we do promise is there are no agendas. Sometimes I will play devil's advocate, but don't be fearful, come on the show. Today, my guests will be John Wilson, better known as Garda Whistleblower. But first, I'll be speaking to Jan van de Ven, the leader of Direct Democracy, and Raymond Whitehead, the founder of Direct Democracy. Join us in Studio 2. Good evening, folks, and welcome to Studio 2. And as I promised, my guests are Jan van de Ven, the leader of Direct Democracy now, and Raymond Whitehead, who is the founder of Direct Democracy. Ray, founder of Direct Democracy, you got us all into trouble, I think. Can you tell us what is Direct Democracy?
Well, Direct Democracy is a form of democracy that allows the people to have a say in their own future and in their own political system on an ongoing basis, not just once every 5 years. So the people get to call referendum on any subject they want, and if the people decide that whatever the referendum is being called on is what they want, it's law.
Yeah, and for the benefit of viewers, I obviously know quite a bit about Direct Democracy, but tell me this, will referendum through a Direct Democracy system really change anything?
Well, the point is that the people own everything anyway. So when the government is out of touch with its people and it begins to bring in laws and legislate in such a way that the laws are having an adverse effect on the people, then it's the right of the people to step in and initiate a referendum to push back on what the government does.
Brilliant. So Ray, what Jana's suggestion is Direct Democracy sits like a policeman, allows government to continue to do what it does, but then pulls a handbrake if something goes wrong. Could we have used it in the last few years?
We could have used it. A good example would be the bank bailout, for instance. If we had Direct Democracy, we probably wouldn't be in that situation in the first place that we're in now, where the people have been forced to bail out banks. So knowing that the people can call referendum and would object to having debts imposed on them against their will and illegally in many cases where they didn't incur this debt, the people would have called a referendum very quickly. The government, knowing that, would not have would have been forced to look for another decision, another solution to that problem.
Yeah, and that was something I suggested, that while the threat of a referendum hangs over a politician, surely that would lead to better governance, would it not?
Well, it does, because if the politicians know that the people have pushback with the threat of a referendum, then the laws that the politicians legislate are more in touch with the needs of the people. When they know that the people can only come back every 5 years and vote, then they have quite a long period of time where they can create laws that are unpopular, but still they can still recover by throwing the people a bone after 5 years.
Right. It would appear to me that it's like the government is against the people in what we're saying rather than for the people. Am I right in that, or is that just us?
I think you're right. The system of Direct Democracy is more of a matriarchal system. The system of representative democracy that we have is more a patriarchal system. It's very macho based. You know, I will do this for you, I will do that. Whereas the matriarchal system is a sharing. And so they have to communicate, they have to be open and transparent, and the people get to discuss and engage with any decision the government makes. Okay. Whereas the system we have, which is representative democracy, means that decisions can be made in private, in Europe, behind closed doors, 3 o'clock in the morning, over the heads of the people.
Right.
And the people have no say.
And when too much drink has been taken in the Dáil bar.
Yes.
Tell me this though, Ray, there are promises of politicians. I'm 50 years of age, I'm used to it since I was 18 years of age. Promises, I'm going to show you a few now on video, and when we come back we'll ask, what would be different under Direct Democracy?
Failed to guarantee a burden sharing arrangement for non-guaranteed bank debt as part of the bailout arrangements. Ireland's commitments on sovereign debt must be honoured in full. Ireland's commitments on debt under guarantee must be honoured in full. What legal or moral compulsion is on Ireland, however, to honour in full debt incurred by Irish banks when there was no state involvement in the arrangements. These loans were entered into freely by willing lenders and willing borrowers with absolutely no state participation. The interest rate charged represented the risk at the time, and there never was a state liability. It is obscene that liability for these loans is now being transferred to the Irish taxpayer, and in many respects to the poorest of the Irish taxpayers. There is 10 billion of subordinated debt in the Irish banks. There is 15 billion of non-guaranteed senior debt. The Irish government and the Irish taxpayer has no liability whatsoever for these debts, but the bailout deal is now forcing them to accept liability because the bailout deal puts this imposition on them. So the Minister, in his budget, reduces social welfare payments. He punishes the blind, the disabled, the widows, the carers, the unemployed. He taxes the poorest at work. And for what? So that the taxpayers can take on the liability for debts that the country never incurred and that arose from private arrangements between private institutions. What a disaster, what an obscenity. How can the government stand over it? How can our European colleagues stand over it?
Well, Ray, there we are. Michael Noonan, before they got into power, giving a fabulous speech. I would have likened to be the author of that speech myself. What an obscenity. How can our government or EU stand over it? Isn't that what's wrong with politics today and why people don't come out and vote?
It is, yes, and there's no accountability and no transparency, and even the opposition don't know what's going on in the government. So with direct democracy you would have that openness and transparency. I think if you look closely at that clip, you'll see a small line across Noonan's forehead where he had the brain transplant before he got into government.
Yeah, and he also says like private arrangements between private borrowers. I would argue that it's a private arrangement between the banks and the government. They cut a deal and didn't consult us on that deal. Other countries, if they were going to commit to such a huge deal like maybe Switzerland, they would actually consult the people through referendum to find out, like they did in Iceland.
Yeah, and isn't it the point that in this video he's actually given out about the previous government? Mm-hmm. Now we have a situation where that previous government, of Fianna Fáil, will probably make up the next government. Mm-hmm. Is it not a crazy merry-go-round we're on of no accountability? And that's what shows it. It's not Michael Noonan's fault.
No.
Is there someone else pulling strings there, Raymond?
If you listen to that clip, you'll see he has his figures all wrong. Yeah. He talks about 10 billion in debt. You know, it's more like 80 or 100 billion.
Yeah, but that's because I mean that's because we got suckered into it. Mm-hmm. Basically, they had to give us skin in the game, so the banks were never honest with us.
Yeah.
And they gave one figure, and they said no, actually it's another figure. But as we committed to it, they sucked us more into it.
Okay.
But that's exactly what we need to end. We need to end this madness.
Yeah, it is a merry-go-round. Let me play another clip. Here's Varadkar promising the Irish people again. Before they came into power. I think he actually mentions he will be in power, and I think he's promised the end of the madness and not another cent is going to be paid, and that was really good news for us all, I think we're agreed to say.
All I can say to the Irish people, who some of whom may be watching tonight, is that if things go our way, there will be a new government in 6 weeks' time, and the banks aren't getting another cent. Anglo-Irish Bank is not getting another cent of our money. And any bank coming to us looking for more money is going to have to show how they're going to impose losses on their junior bondholders, on their senior bondholders, and their other creditors before they come looking to us for any more money, not another cent.
Well, Jan, I heard him correctly, didn't I? I wasn't mistaken. He did say not another cent to the electorate. And that was, I mean, you couldn't mistake that, am I right? You couldn't mistake that message?
No, you couldn't, but actually what you have is people are duking it out for the right to represent the Irish people, and they want to get the vote of the Irish person. So therefore you can promise them anything. And when you get their vote, once you're in government, you tend to forget the things that you promised.
Right. Ray, it seems to be a quest for power at all costs. Am I right in saying that they will literally say anything?
Well, obviously from the last two clips you can see there that it's a great business to be in. You can promise whatever people want to hear and just go and do whatever you want after that for the next 5 years.
Right.
And
Again.
well, let me just say this, the point that what we're trying to get across with Direct Democracy Ireland is that if the people vote for Direct Democracy Ireland, then they're voting for real change, because what we want to do is we want to give the power of referendum back to the people. Once the people have that power, then they can push back on the government, because if we wait for the government to do the right thing, they're probably never going to do it. But if we have that power assumed for ourselves, then if they won't do it, then we'll do it.
Yeah, as I see it, the promises they make is probably more for the recall issue, and the direct democracy part, the referendum part, is more to pull a handbrake, even if they didn't promise something but did something crazy. Yeah. Again, I'm going to play another clip if you don't mind, and this is Gilmore, and he's talking about who actually pulls the strings within his party, I believe.
The first choice that Irish voters are going to have to make in this election is whether our budgets are decided in Frankfurt or whether they're decided by the democratically elected government of the Irish people. Now let's be very clear about this. The bad deal that Fianna Fáil made with the EU and the IMF effectively writes the budgets for the next 4 years is about a choice to be made by the Irish people about whether our budgets and our financial affairs are going to be done Frankfurt's way or the way that the Labour Party is proposing.
Well, welcome back. Ray, I see the animation here. It all seems very, very false to me. Is somebody just pulling strings? Because it certainly didn't go Labour's way. It certainly is Frankfurt's way. And he said, of course, again, he's on the roundabout of the blame game. He's blaming Fianna Fáil, and he said budgets will be for 4 years. Here we are, 7 years on, still Frankfurt's way?
Still Frankfurt's way, and he spoke about the people will make the choice, and the people are not making the choice. And it's very obvious that the system doesn't allow us to have a say or have a voice.
That's right. Ray is right there. We didn't have a choice. The promises that were made, choice was given on that. But when you renege on everything, it's not really a choice, is it, Jan?
Well, it's not really a choice, and the politician has money and power to redeem himself. So they can say anything they want. When they get into government, they can feel better because they get paid really well, and they get a lot of money and a lot of power. So they're out of touch with the people. I think if you paid the politicians the average wage of the average Irish person, they probably wouldn't be in such a hurry to produce policies like that.
Yeah.
They would be a little bit more careful,
And
I
I
think.
can see coming up to the local elections now that the politicians are starting to talk about rolling back on some taxes.
That's right. It's starting again, isn't it?
Throwing a few crumbs to people to make them feel that.
That's right. That was my fear for the Irish electorate, that they don't get reminded of this stuff. And while this show is trying to cheer up people as well and have an entertaining show, I'm quite sure after watching some of these videos, maybe they'll be sticking their heads in the oven. So what I will suggest I was going to suggest that maybe the guys making these promises at the time were genuine. I talked about the animation. They were genuine. But the last clip I'm going to show is basically going to say that they're not genuine. It is a game they're playing.
Do you accept your broken promises? Clearly understandable and understood promises.
Well, at this stage of the lifetime of the government, clearly we had to find money somewhere, and clearly some of them are a breach of the promise.
Well, you didn't go into all that detail before the election. You kept it really simple.
The
Protect child benefit, vote Labour.
Yeah, well, I mean, isn't that what you tend to do during an election?
But that...
I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse me laughing there. It's a very serious matter. I mean, it really is a serious matter. The country's destroyed.
Yeah.
It will not get better if we continue on this course. All the new taxes in, and he has the audacity to come out on national television and tell us, isn't that what you do during an election? But isn't the real problem, gentlemen, I'll put it to you both, isn't the real problem that the system allows for that? That guy, to my mind, should be in jail. Is there not a breach of trust? And that's the problem. Isn't it the system rather than the individuals? I know we might have been having a little go at the individuals, but it is the system, isn't it?
And he's not the only one. I mean, Noonan is in the press as he worded it, that you expect a little hyperbole coming up to an election, so that they're all very much aware that they can stretch the truth or even say whatever they want.
Well,
Yeah,
the truth being stretched, the good bit there, Jan.
Yeah, no, but it is the system. It is the system because the system concentrates too much power in the hands of very few individuals. And when you have that much power in the hands of very few individuals, then those are the people that multinationals, banks, whatever special interests need to lobby to get their way. And when you lobby them, when they make a deal, a backroom deal, it doesn't necessarily consider the needs of the many. Direct democracy takes that pyramid with the apex of power and turns it upside down and puts the people on top and makes the politicians the true public servants.
Yeah. Well, Ray, I don't mean to smile there. We've just seen Varadkar, Noonan and Gilmore all telling the people the way things should be. What has gone so disastrously wrong? Or is there something that we're not seeing here?
There is. First of all, politicians can make decisions, can make promises leading up to an election and not have to keep them. Whereas under a direct democracy, they would be held accountable by the people to fulfill those promises. Now, the other part of that problem is they can make these promises because even the opposition are not...
They're not pushing them.
Well,
they should be like the policeman too, should they not? Even in a representative democracy, but it really is a government. They normally say a government is as good as the opposition. Bad opposition, bad government. But what went wrong with all these promises, Jan? It's okay to me if they promise something small, but something that destroys a country of giving all our money away to gamblers on a stock exchange, it's crazy to me. You just heard the speeches.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about it is that's the problem with the type of government that we have. We have say one thing, do another type of government where politicians are trying to entice you to vote for them. But once they're in government, they don't have to stay accountable to the promises that they make. On the other hand, a direct democracy holds them accountable. In a direct democracy, a politician would never say, I'll do this for you and then not do it because they know that it would be voted out in a matter of a few months.
Yeah, you see, the current system allows for the opposition to tell lies because they aren't even aware of what's going on behind the closed doors. And when they get in, they can turn around and say, well, we didn't know, and you know, this is the real situation now. But under direct democracy, there is openness and transparency. So with that openness and transparency, they have all the facts, the people have all the facts, and then they can decide you know, what promises they make. And if they don't keep them, then the people can hold them accountable. But it's all about openness and transparency.
Also in this form of government, people tend to not want to be involved anymore because they've seen for generations that there are a bunch of liars. And they say, well, why should I even vote? Because whenever I vote for the other guy, it's the same as the guy that I didn't want to vote for because they don't stand for anything. But in a direct democracy, they have to stand for something. And therefore, your government will be much more a reflection of the needs of the people.
So, tell me this. You're standing in Europe, Jan, as am I and Ray. Promises. We have to be careful of promises we make because now we're intending to institute a system where you can be held accountable on that promise. No one told me about that, Ray. Can you explain how that works?
Well,
what would be the mechanism like? What would be the mechanism? Is there recall in direct democracy?
There is recall, and so that's the accountability. If the people can hire the politicians, they can fire them if they're not doing their job. And that works in every area of life. If you want somebody to build a house for you and he's not doing it, then you can fire the guy and get somebody else to finish the job properly. Whereas we can't do that in our politics. You know, so there's no real accountability.
Well, in direct democracy, you don't have to wait 5 years to do it. Yeah. In direct democracy, you could do it at any time.
Okay, and tell me this then. Am I right in saying that that's really the problem within the system today? There is no accountability, and the speeches that we just seen can continue to be made through the next election. The reason we showed them clips as well, we believe the Irish public have a very small memory space, if you like, and they need to be reminded of these things come election.
I'm not sure they have a short memory, Ben, because if you look at the elections, only 70% of the people don't vote because they're disillusioned. So there's a very small percentage of the people who are actually voting. And unfortunately, the people who don't vote are the ones who are giving the okay to the small percentage that's dictating to the rest of the
So,
country.
voting for change really needs the 70% who don't come out to vote. We
does.
really need to target them for real change, because the 30% just seem to be on that merry-go-round of Tweedledum or Tweedledee. Is that right?
Yeah, I would encourage the people of Ireland, if they want real change, that they come out and support Direct Democracy Ireland, because that will empower them with real change, and they can then get involved in making their democracy a better place. Yeah.
Okay, folks, I know that you have set up something where you can text the word change to 53377 and get more information about who's running, what candidates, and more information on direct democracy. Gentlemen, it was great to have you on. I hope to have you on the show again. In a moment, we'll be back with Garda John Wilson, better known as the Garda whistleblower, and let's see what he has to say. Thank you very much. See you after the show, after the break. Welcome back, folks. We're now joined in studio with John Wilson, better known as one of the Garda whistleblowers, along with Sergeant McCabe. Unfortunately, Sergeant McCabe is obviously a serving member still, so can't be with us. John, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Ben.
John, just give us a background, first of all, about when you joined the Gardaí and what was your expectations?
Well, you could call me an accidental Garda, Ben.
Like most, a lot went on to be the priest and then there was no demand.
But in early 1981, we used to get the Sunday press at home, and there was an advertisement in the Sunday press. My mother brought to my attention they were taking guards at 18 years of age.
Right.
The recruitment age up to that point had been 19.
Yeah.
So I went into the Cavan Garda station the following day, Monday.
And made your applications?
I spoke to a man called Tony McLaughlin. He was a sergeant at the time, and a very decent man. He subsequently became an inspector. He retired as an inspector. Yeah. And I applied to become a member of Garda Síochána.
Okay, and then you went to Templemore and passed out. What year was that, John?
I joined in September 1982.
Okay, 82.
The 22nd of September 1982.
All right.
I was 19 and a half years of age.
All right, so you were still quite young passing out.
I was, well, in today's terms I was, yes.
All right, and then tell me this, your first station I believe was Pearse Street then in Dublin.
That's correct, yeah.
What sort of an experience was that for you?
Well, I was raised in rural Cavan.
So that was an eye-opener going to Pearse Street.
Yes, it was an eye-opener, yes.
Yeah.
And I'll never ever forget my first day on the beat. It was around Wellington Quay, Aston Quay, Westmoreland Street, that area.
Was it day or night?
It was night time.
All right.
It was a Friday evening. I was working 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. I'll never forget.
That definitely was an eye-opener.
And I was absolutely starstruck.
Yeah.
With the lights and whatever. And I mean,
Yeah.
When I was a young child, I was fascinated. We got our first television in 1974. Sorry. Yeah. I was only about 11 years of age, and I was fascinated with American cop programs.
All right, yeah.
And
so this would have been very like it for you, coming from, say, Cavan to the big city.
Oh, the big city. Well, I mean, I'd been on holidays to Dublin and since I was 5 years of age, on a regular basis, on a yearly basis, up to Lissadell Road in Drimna.
Okay.
I mean, but it was an absolutely
eye-opener.
And
you were talking offset to me there in more ways than one. I mean, you first came across maybe the Gardaí running not quite the way you thought. You got a phone call one day after, I believe you maybe gave somebody a ticket for a seatbelt or penalty points. We can't really remember.
Well, there were no penalty points in those days.
Of course,
but
yeah.
I mean, I became aware very early on in my career that I was expected to take care of certain people. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I'm going to cut into a link from where you were at that time to what led then to a protest outside the Dáil in recent times, and then we'll talk about what basically came from that point of Templemore and in Pearse Street to where we are sort of today, if you like. So I'll just run that bit of tape there.
We are not anti-Gardaí. I was a proud member of Garda Síochána for over 30 years until I was forced out for for reporting corruption and malpractice within the organisation. Not corruption by rank and file Gardaí, by senior officers in Garda Síochána.
Well, John, there we see you're quite animated outside the Dáil and a lot of annoyance and anger. You obviously joined the Gardaí with a view to it running correctly, and we'll go in now to where you were in Pearse Street with your phone call from a friend of a friend, if you like, and you were asked to do something.
That's correct. I was on the beat around Grafton Street one day, and I got a radio message to return to the station for an urgent phone call.
Mm-hmm.
I duly walked back to the station and went down to the old collator's office before Pearse Street was kind of remodeled a couple of years ago, a number of years ago. But anyhow, this phone call duly came, and it was a very senior politician at the time.
Okay.
And I had stopped an employee of his. And
Will you say what party he's from?
The Soldiers of Destiny.
All right.
But I had prosecuted this individual for an offence.
Yeah.
It may have been, but no road tax or no seatbelt.
Yeah,
But
it wasn't murder.
I can't
murder,
remember the specific offence. And this man asked me to take care of it, and I duly did.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would be fair to say, as a young guard in Pearse Street, if you were told by senior officials to take care of something and you didn't, you'd probably be, checking lights on bicycles in Kerry for 3 in the afternoon or something.
No offence to Kerry, it's a wonderful county,
yes.
But I learned very, very early on in my career that I was expected to.
There's a line to be told.
Well, let's put it this way: that the law didn't apply equally to everybody in the country.
Yeah, and that's a terrible thing when you have a career that you're hoping to pursue within Gardaí and it didn't work maybe as it should have done. Can you tell me this then? In later times, it turned on to be you came out and you whistleblowed, and there was a commission of inquiry. In later times, you noticed penalty points disappearing then when penalty points were in at a huge and alarming rate. Can you tell us really more up to date now how that took place and what was the start of all of that?
Towards the end of 2011, I became aware that tens of thousands of lawfully issued fixed charge penalty notices were being terminated by certain senior members of Garda Síochána, certain senior guard officers.
Yeah. And they would have been on the same principle of why you were asked many years ago even to take care of these offences. It was similar, it was ongoing in the Gardaí, but it's just getting worse and worse. Is that what you would be saying? Well,
the penalty points system came into operation in this country in 2004. And as you're fully aware, Ben, when an individual gets penalty points, there are serious implications, financial implications, insurance and whatever. But we noticed clusters developing where the same individuals were being caught or were getting tickets for various road traffic offences on a number, the same people getting tickets on a number of occasions.
Yes.
The same individuals were getting caught maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
Right.
And for some unknown reason, these tickets were terminated.
Yeah, and of course, as they're being terminated, you don't really have the penalty of them. So chances are, if I was caught and I wasn't terminated, the chance of me being caught again is probably slim. But because these people aren't answerable, the chance of them getting caught is probably, they're not that worried.
It was perverting the course of justice on a massive scale. Now, you wouldn't have to be Hercule Poirot to come to the conclusion that there was something amiss here.
Of course.
These penalty points, these tickets were being corruptly terminated. Of that I have no doubt.
And you made complaints. Was it you along with other Gardaí made complaints, or was it just you that you're aware of that made these complaints on this particular time through the proper channels? I think Mr. Connolly was the main go-to guy, was he not?
Yeah, well, correct. Well, Oliver Connolly was the Garda confidential recipient. He was the individual that members of Garda Síochána had to approach with complaints of malpractice and wrongdoing within the organisation. And both myself and Sergeant McCabe made complaints to Oliver Connolly. Now, I made a complaint in relation to a very, very small number of terminations, which related to close relatives of serving members of Garda Síochána.
Okay.
That was the first complaint I made. And I made that complaint to Mr. Connolly in March 2012.
Yeah.
Now, this complaint was handed over to the Garda Commissioner, Mr. Callanan, on the 4th of April 2012.
Right.
And he gave me an undertaking at the time to contact me and to respond to this complaint, to give me an update in relation to the complaint, right?
And did he ever do that?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
I waited and waited and waited, and in the meantime, Sergeant McCabe emailed the office of the Taoiseach and other government departments.
Okay.
When I say the office, he emailed Enda Kenny direct.
Okay.
But anyhow, excuse me, in September 2012,
yeah,
I made a complaint under the Garda Síochána anti-fraud policy, which related to a senior officer who had terminated a large number of lawfully issued fixed charge notices.
Yeah.
And I outlined 20 examples. And I included, I was very specific in relation, when I was making the allegation, I made it clear that these were only examples of a much greater number of fixed charge notices that this man had terminated.
Yeah.
And I delivered that to the office of the Assistant Commissioner, Human Resource Management, Garda Headquarters, Mr. Fintan Fanning.
Mm-hmm.
I subsequently received an acknowledgement from Assistant Commissioner Fanning.
And it was really going nowhere, though.
Well, I waited for some considerable time, got no response. I then approached Clare Daly TD.
Right, and that's when it first then became into the public domain. What I'll do is we'll take a break and we'll pick up the story after the break and just see what led then to resignations and stuff like that. See you after the break. Welcome back, folks, and we were talking with John Wilson, Garda whistleblower. John, can I just pick up where we left off? So several complaints were made. You felt they were going nowhere. This was ongoing. Inevitably, really, you came to 50. Not really retirement age, but you chose to do that. Can you explain why that was?
Well, in the aftermath of going to Clare Daly,
yeah,
and then the other independent TDs, Mick Wallace, Luke Flanagan, and Joan Collins, they took up the case,
yeah,
in relation to this scandal,
yeah,
or what has become known as the penalty point scandal.
Penalty point gate.
Penalty point gate, yes.
Yeah, and they really brought it out into the public attention here, when many others that you went to did not. I tell you what we will do in a couple of seconds. I'm going to go to Mick Wallace, where he basically is in the Dáil, and he has a very angry go at Minister Shatter, more or less on your behalf. Would that be fair to say?
Well, I mean, it's on my behalf and on Maurice McCabe's behalf.
Right, okay. Well, we'll go with that there now. We'll just have a look.
You look up here at us and you'd say, how dare those people with their long hair and raggy jeans have the audacity to challenge you? Well, I'll tell you something. The people of Wexford that elected me to come in here didn't elect me to come in here and approve of your behaviour. They came in here, they put me in here to challenge it.
Thank you, David.
It's time for you to go, Minister, and bring the Commissioner with you.
Well, we just heard there, go, Minister, and take the Commissioner with you. What have you to say to that?
I thoroughly agree with the sentiments expressed by Deputy Mick Wallace. And can I just say also, Ben, that I have the utmost respect for Mick Wallace,
yeah,
for Clare Daly, for Luke Ming Flanagan,
yeah,
for Joan Collins.
Yeah, and I've had some dealing with them before myself,
and
when we wanted to highlight stuff.
Can
in
I also
fairness,
mention,
they were there.
Oh, of course they were, yes.
Yeah.
And can I also mention Pádraig McLaughlin,
yeah,
who's on the Justice Committee, Sinn Féin member as well. But the one positive from this is that I've got to meet people of this calibre.
Yeah,
And it's been it's been a great honour for me to have met these people, and these people are, they have fought so hard on my behalf and on behalf of Sergeant McCabe and on behalf of the Irish public, which, these people are far more important than I will ever be.
Yeah, well, the point is, of course, you would have never been heard only for these people. You went through all the channels and you were closed down.
Yeah.
It eventually led anyway to your retirement early, I must say. You hardly look as old as I do even, and you're retired.
Yeah, I've aged greatly in the last year, Ben. But can I say that Claire Daly brought these allegations into the public domain on prime time. And we all know what happened to Claire Daly. She was subsequently arrested on suspicion of drunk driving and handcuffed. I mean, she's about 5'0", but they had to handcuff Claire Daly. I mean, that's
she's a feisty woman now. I'd put handcuffs on her too.
She is, yes. But I can just say that in the aftermath of Claire Daly going public, Commissioner Callanan referred to an incident that happened at Cavan Garda Station. Now, he mentioned this in May of, when he appeared before the PAC in May of last year, and then subsequently when he appeared before the PAC back in January. He was asked a question by Mary Lou MacDonald, when did they become aware of our identities?
Yeah.
Now, I contend that they knew who we were a long time before.
I'm quite sure.
A long time before they have admitted to knowing, but whatever. He referred to an incident that happened in Cavan Garda Station, which wasn't my Garda Station. I was stationed in Clones. On the 12th of December 2012, I went into Cavan Garda Station to carry out further inquiries in relation to using the pulse system, in relation to the corrupt termination of these lawfully issued tickets. I was confronted by an inspector and a sergeant. And I was asked what I was doing there. And I gave the answer I gave you a second ago. I told him I was carrying out inquiries into the corrupt termination of lawfully issued fixed charge penalty notices.
Right.
I was asked who I was
investigating that for?
No, who I was dealing with.
All right.
And I said I was dealing with members of the Oireachtas.
All right.
I refused to tell the inspector who I was dealing with in the Oireachtas.
Yeah.
Mr. Commissioner Callanan has stated publicly that he became aware of our identities on that occasion, on that date, when I was confronted in Cavan Garda Station.
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't going to give Claire Daly's name to the inspector on that occasion, I certainly wasn't going to give Maurice McCabe's name to the inspector. So that's absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
Now, in the aftermath of that, on the 14th of December 2012, the Garda Commissioner issued the first of his orders, the first of his gagging orders, warning.
Any member?
This was directed to a direction, a personal direction to me.
Okay.
Sergeant McCabe subsequently got the same order.
Yeah.
But this order was a warning to desist from using Pulse, to desist from downloading material and handing it over to other individuals.
Right.
So, I mean, as I mentioned, as I alluded to earlier on, I acted lawfully at all times.
Of course.
I acted under the provisions of Section 62 of the Garda Síochána Act 2005, which entitled a member from Garda Síochána to bring certain concerns to the attention of members of the Oireachtas. That's what I did.
Right.
Now,
Callanan was bent out of shape by that, wasn't he, at the questioning at the Dáil committee?
Well, of course he was, but if I can just continue in relation to the gagging orders. Now, from the 14th of December, I stopped using Pulse. I didn't do any checking on Pulse. But on the Saturday before Christmas Day 2012, Shane Ross appeared on the Marion Finucane radio programme on RT Radio 1, and he used, I think it was the first time that the word corruption was used.
Right.
When referring to what later became known as the penalty pound scandal.
Yeah.
Now, in the aftermath of Deputy Ross using the word corruption, all hell broke loose in Garda headquarters, because that's a word that
they don't want to hear.
Don't want to hear in Garda headquarters, the word corruption.
Yeah.
But on the 27th of 2 days after Christmas 2012, sorry.
Yeah.
I was off with my family, and I received a phone call from my own superintendent.
Yeah.
He wanted to meet me urgently. So I travelled down to Clonus, and he read over a second order, personal order, a second directive from Commissioner Martin Callan that he had signed himself. Directing me to directing that my access to Pulse was now at an end, unless I was under supervision, which in effect stopped me from doing my job.
Yeah, you can't do your job.
But more disturbing, on both occasions, when I got the order on the 14th of December and when I got the second order on the 27th of December, I requested the two superintendents who delivered those orders on behalf of the Commissioner to give me a copy of the orders. And they informed me that they were under instructions from the Garda Commissioner not to hand over a copy of those orders to me. My solicitor, Peter Connolly, requested that the Garda, in early January 2013, he requested that the Garda Commissioner
give a copy of that.
Hand over a copy of these two orders.
You'd imagine you'd be entitled to that.
Well, yes, but he again refused to do so.
Right.
On the 28th of December 2012, I received a third order, this time from my own superintendent.
And this time you got a copy of it?
I got a copy of it, yes. Now, that was fine. On the 31st of December 2012, a few days later, New Year's Eve, I was working in Clonus with a colleague. Yeah. And I arrested an individual for drunk driving around 11 o'clock at night. And I conveyed him to Monaghan Garda Station to be processed. Now, bearing in mind, I couldn't access Pulse. I couldn't print off a charge sheet.
Who he was or what charges he had or anything.
So, correct. Yeah. So I went to Monaghan Station. And as it happened, we were using a van on the occasion. We had no patrol car. I mean, that's another day's work with no patrol cars. But we were using a van from Monaghan. Brought the prisoner to Monaghan. I spoke to a sergeant to try and explain my predicament to him because my hands were tied. Yeah. The sergeant stopped me and told me, "It's okay, John." He says, "We've all been fully briefed about your situation." All of this, right? Okay. Yeah. Briefed. Yeah. But anyhow, no, this sergeant, a very, very decent man. I have no problems with him. Yeah, yeah. Anyhow,
but the system ostracised.
Well, hold on. Anyhow, Ben, I got assistance. I managed to charge the prisoner. As I said, we were using a van at the time. Being New Year's Eve, you can get a bit rowdy and whatever in big towns or whatever. Yeah. So they held on to the van in Monaghan. They gave us a patrol car to use for the rest of our tour of duty. But went back to Clonus, finished up at 4 o'clock in the morning, came into work at 3 o'clock the next afternoon. And after 4 o'clock, we went back into Monaghan to leave back in the patrol car to get back our van. Went into Monaghan anyway, as it happens, and this is not important, but the van was gone to Dublin or whatever, and a prisoner escort. So we stayed around the office chatting for a while, and this sergeant walks into the office, and he gave me serious, dirty looks. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Never said a word. He walked out again. I went out the back of the station, and I retrieved 3 bags of rubbish, discarded bedding, shredding for my dogs. Yeah. I'd often done this over the previous 10 years. I had often collected rubbish from the bin or discarded paper from my animals. That was fine. Put the bags in the back of the patrol car, as I often did. Yeah. We left the station, myself and my colleague. We drove out from the front of Monaghan Garda Station through the electronic barrier onto the public road, Plantation Road in Monaghan, a public road. This sergeant that I alluded to earlier on, came kind of, you could say, walking very, very fast or nearly kind of semi-sprinting. Yeah. And he signalled the driver of the car to stop, which he did. He then opened the patrol car and
wanted to see what bags you had.
Let's put it this way, I was subjected to a search on the side of a public road. Right. A couple of weeks later, I woke up to find a rat tied to my front door. That's in the public domain. Yeah.
Well, John, it looks like you were ostracised from the Gardaí. Inevitably, it went to your basically having to leave on Garda Síochána. I know that pained you greatly. No doubt this story will run and run. Do you see any hope for the Gardaí? Should there be new independent commission set up, do you think? Independent?
I found my position was untenable, had become untenable, Ben. I left the organisation on the 1st of May 2013. It broke my heart to do so, and I'm still grieving for my job. That sounds ridiculous, but I'm told by people in the know that that's quite normal. Yeah. We were vindicated by the Comptroller and Auditor General's report in relation to the penalty points module.
Yeah.
We were vindicated. Now, this begs the question, as Mick Clifford, the great journalist in the Examiner newspaper put it, how could a bunch of accountants find what trained Garda investigators couldn't find? That 1 in 5 lawfully issued tickets, 20% of all tickets were being terminated for no reason. Now, bearing in mind that the CNAG is purely the auditor for the government, and the CNAG couldn't give reasons or couldn't lay blame. All the CNAG report could do was to state facts. The O'Mahony report. It beggars belief, and Alan Shatter tried to put a spin, and he was comparing both reports as being as having made similar findings. That's like saying that the Bible and the Beano magazine are similar publications. I mean, it's that ludicrous. Yeah. It's bizarre.
John, we've heard all the difficulties. What are the solutions, as you see it, with your experience?
Well, firstly, Ben, we need a totally independent Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission. And it's been proposed that in future, the members of the Garda Síochána can go to GSOC with their complaints of malpractice and wrongdoing within the force or within the Garda service. And this will only work if GSOC is made truly independent, because as long as you have serving members of Garda Síochána attached to the Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission, then it can never be and will never be truly independent.
Yeah, well, it lends itself to the corruption that you've seen. Wasn't that the case with the old Garda Complaints Board? It was very similar, wasn't it? I mean, it was Gardaí investigating Gardaí. So you're back to the thing with the penalty points of friends of friends. Well, in Gardaí, you have friends of friends too. And in fact, you would be ostracised if you didn't pull a favour for a member. Wouldn't that be the
Well, as we sit here today, GSOC, the so-called independent Ombudsman Commission, cannot access the Garda Pulse system. They cannot access the Garda Pulse system. I mean, if the 2 members attached to GSOC are on leave or not available, the investigators have got to wait until these members come back on duty. This is perverse. This would not be tolerated in any other civilised European country. Now, as I've said, the Garda Síochána as a whole needs to be totally reformed from the very, very top to the very, very bottom. And I believe that the next Garda Commissioner should be an outsider with no loyalties to the organisation. Right? Now, if this does not happen,
in 10 years' time, we'll still be talking about it.
We will be, yes. And if this doesn't happen, when Martin Callan steps down, and I don't mean to cast aspersions on any other senior member from Garda Síochána, right? If we do not have true reform of the organisation,
it'll be the same thing.
It'll be a case of,
so this guy is unnamed, but it's still going to be the same.
It'll be the same tune played by a different orchestra. Quite simply.
Yeah, so it's the system that's inherently wrong. And it's fair to say you're not anti-Gardaí. I mean, I think that comes across anyway. You actually love the Gardaí.
Of course not. I mean, the vast majority of members of Garda Síochána, I mean, are decent, honourable people. I was a proud member of Garda Síochána for over 30 years. In relation to the promotion system within Garda Síochána that presently exists.
Yeah, that needs to be overhauled too, though.
It is incestuous, dysfunctional and rotten.
Yeah, and that's politically as well.
Of course. Internal politics, external politics.
Just before we go, you touched on Oliver Connolly. I know that in a personal light, you'd like to say something about Oliver.
Well, I met Mr. Connolly on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
And I found him to be a very, very decent individual.
Yeah.
And I mean, I believe that
his hands were tied in the system too.
Well, his sole remit, Ben, was as a postman. He took complaints from guards. He then handed them over to the Garda commissioners.
So he did what he could do.
His sole remit, but I mean, there is a very, very, I mean, the elephant in the room. There is a very, very big question here that has to be answered by Mr. Connolly. We're all aware of this meeting that happened, that transpired between Sergeant McCabe and Oliver Connolly.
Yeah. What
prompted Mr. Connolly to request an urgent meeting with Sergeant Maurice McCabe, a serving Garda sergeant? And I believe that Mr. Connolly has got to answer. I mean, my preferred option would have been that if Mr. Connolly had been invited to appear before the Oireachtas Justice Committee,
we might have got some answers to that.
To answer the questions which related to what transpired at that meeting between himself and Sergeant McCabe.
Yeah.
And I believe that those questions still remain, despite the fact that Mr. Connolly has recently issued a press statement in which he was very, very critical of Sergeant McCabe for having taped the meeting.
Yeah.
If Sergeant McCabe, if Sergeant McCabe had not taped that meeting for his own protection, as he is legally entitled to do, nobody would have believed him.
That's correct. So he proved it was a prudent move on his part.
A very, very prudent move.
Yeah.
But as I say, Sergeant McCabe is still, I can't speak on his behalf, but he is a very, very decent and honourable person.
Yeah.
And when the full facts come out into the public domain, eventually, as they will, I have no doubt that the people in this country owe that man a great deal of gratitude, a great debt of gratitude.
And I think it's fair to say, apart from the stories we do hear, it's fair to say that the vast majority of serving Gardaí members are honest, decent, hard-working men. And
they will go above and beyond the call of duty.
Yeah, and we've always found that, even though we've had our run-ins with them now and again.
Of course,
but we've always found them
Ben,
decent.
It's a basic human reaction.
Of course.
If you have negative dealings with the Garda, the human reaction, the natural reaction is...
But even at that, I have to say, in most occasions, and on a few videos that we used to put up, we used to thank the Gardaí for their behaviour. We actually found most of them to be decent, honourable men.
Yeah, well, as I said, most guards,
they just want to do their job.
You can investigate a murder and still be kind of very, very polite and respectful and kind of adhere to the human rights, the human rights of a suspect and an individual. What I've noticed that has crept in recent years, there's a great deal of ignorance being shown to members of the public, and in relation, just to leave it to bad manners for the moment. There are, kind of people are complaining. And these people who are doing all of the complaining, they're not the usual suspects. They are very, very decent, respectable people who would have the utmost regard for the Garda Síochána as a force. The confidence in the Garda Síochána, and it gives me no great pleasure to say this, is being eroded.
Yeah, it'd be fair to say it's probably at an all-time low now.
It is at an all-time low, and I can say that morale within the force is at an all-time low, because the vast majority of guards, they're just very, very highly professional people, and they don't want this negative publicity. But it's the cover-up, the rejection. You've even seen it. Alan Shatter, even in relation to the penalty points module, he on the 1st of October 2013, at the publication of the Comptroller and Auditor General's report, he was given an opportunity to apologise to myself and Sergeant McCabe, because that report vindicated it.
Of course.
Right. Mr. Shatter, instead of apologising and accepting that our allegations had been correct, he put the boot in by saying that we failed, having gone to other people outside of the Dáil, we failed to cooperate with the internal Garda inquiry.
That's right.
False.
Yes. And he gave the impression in the public that you didn't actually follow protocol.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, finally, Ben, I would invite Mr. Shatter to come outside the Dáil and to make those comments.
Yeah, well, we hope to have Mr. Shatter on with an open invitation to him, and hopefully he will answer some of the questions, and that will be interesting.
Don't hold your breath, Ben.
No fear of it.
And can I just make one more comment? I can respect the minister who takes criticism, and
of course,
and who accepts constructive criticism. Even during the Dáil debates last week, there was a day set out, kind of, to debate this matter, in relation to the more substantive allegations that Maurice McCabe has made.
Yeah.
And I was there. I watched the proceedings, and Alan Shatter, he was smirking, playing with his phone, talking to colleagues. As Minister for Justice, he should be sitting there, kind of listening to all of the contributions. He mightn't agree with a lot of the contributions, but as our Minister for Justice, he was obliged to go in there and to take the matter more seriously and to take the smug look off his face.
Yeah.
And he seems to accept that everything that Commissioner Callanan tells him. I believe that the relationship is unhealthy. The relationship, they appear to be, they're far too close.
Course, yeah.
And it's a case of, I have no longer confidence in either of those two individuals.
Yeah.
And I think it's a case of united they stand, united they must fall.
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
Is McCabe in a lonely place right now?
Again, I have to reiterate that I cannot talk, I cannot speak on behalf of Sergeant Maurice McCabe, but suffice to say that he has, there are a certain amount of...
Is he, no, what I meant was, is he ostracised like you, do you think? Does he use the pulse system?
He's still prevented from using the pulse system.
He's still prevented, so he really can't do his job.
No, he can't.
Okay.
He can't. No.
On a final note, you're running in the local elections?
Well, it's uncharted territory. I was approached by a number of individuals.
Of course.
And I decided to throw my hat into the ring, although I'm from I would have a very political background. My uncle was the former Taoiseach John Wilson. I have a brother, Senator, Senator Dimmer Wilson. He's in Shannon Éireann. That's where the commonality ends.
Yeah.
We have the same parents.
All right, yeah.
But no, he's a very, very decent individual. But, Ben, there are many people in our communities who feel totally alienated from all levels of government in this country.
Yeah, well, there's frustration. Nothing's been done, and there's a merry-go-round of politicians, and still nothing been done. You didn't dip your toe in the DDI pool, John.
I'm running as an independent. I fully respect what you are doing, Ben. But I hope to be a voice. If I am lucky enough to be elected, and it's a big if, big if. If I am lucky enough to be elected to Cavan County Council, I will be a voice for those people that feel alienated.
Yeah, and that's what we're here for in IIN as well. John, I wish you all the best and all the luck in the election.
Thank you very much.
As you know, I'm running in it myself.
I will need it, Ben.
But we won't be going head to head. So I can wish you all
the luck.
You
won't need luck, Ben. You're a natural. I'm only sticking my toe in here. I am facing into the great unknown.
There's many people come on here and try to muzzle me, John. I'm not having it.
No, Ben. I'm a straight shooter, and I think, Ben, in relation to your own case, you frightened the so-called political establishment because you got such a high vote in the Meath by-election.
Well, I'm hoping I can build on it.
Well, I hope you do, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, John.
And if I was in this area, you would definitely get a vote from me.
Well, that's good enough. Thanks, folks. That's it for today's programme. As I say, check the website. If you want to come on the show, you want to suggest people to come on the show that you'd like to have on, don't be afraid to email us at info@irelandsindependentnetwork.com. Thank you and good night.